Most people aim too low in life. They set goals that are safe, comfortable, and realistic, believing that if they simply work hard enough, they will get by. But in the 10x rule, Grant Cardone shatters this mindset. He argues that to achieve extraordinary success, you must set targets that are 10 times bigger than what you think you want and take action that is 10 times greater than what you believe is necessary. This is not about working yourself to exhaustion for the sake of it. It is about rewriting your expectations for yourself, breaking through the limits you have unconsciously accepted, and playing the game at a level most people never even consider. The book shows that if you think small, you will act small, and your results will be small. But if you think 10x bigger and take 10x more action, you create momentum that makes success inevitable. Cardone draws from his own journey from being broke, addicted, and unemployed in his 20s, to building a multi-million-dollar business empire. He is not speaking as a theorist but as someone who has applied the 10x rule in every area of his life, from sales to business to personal growth. Through bold examples, raw truths, and unapologetic ambition, the 10x rule pushes you to stop settling, stop making excuses, and start multiplying your actions and expectations until your life matches the size of your potential. This is not a book for the faint of heart. It is a challenge to think bigger, act bolder, and never again allow average results to be your standard. Part 1. Thinking 10x bigger. Imagine you are standing at the bottom of a mountain. You look up and see the peak high, sharp, and covered in clouds. Most people in this moment do not even think about climbing it. They set their sights lower, aiming for the small hill beside it. That hill is safe, manageable, and achievable without much risk. And so, they climb it, but when they reach the top, they realize it is nothing more than a bump in the landscape. Grant Cardone begins the 10x rule by saying this: the problem is not that you aim too high and miss, it is that you aim too low and hit. Most people's goals are set at the level they believe they can comfortably reach, and this is exactly why they remain in the realm of mediocrity. When you aim for something 10 times bigger than you think is possible, you begin to see the world differently. Let us say your goal is to earn $100,000 a year. Cardone says, multiply that goal by 10. Now you are aiming for $1 million. What happens? The actions you imagine taking shift dramatically. Instead of thinking about working a bit harder or finding a small side job, you start thinking about building a business, launching a high-value product, or scaling your efforts in ways you had never considered. The 10x rule forces you to step out of the comfortable zone and into the possibility zone. It is not just about the goal itself, it is about who you must become to achieve it. Aiming for 10x forces you to think creatively, push harder, and demand more from yourself than you ever have before. Cardone shares from his own life. In his 20s, he was broke, deep in debt, and stuck in a job he did not enjoy. His first goals were small: get out of debt, save a little money, and try not to lose his job. But when he discovered the idea of multiplying his goals by 10, everything changed. Instead of just trying to survive, he aimed to become the top salesperson in his company. Then, when he achieved that, he aimed to build his own business. Then, to make that business the most dominant in his industry. At every level, the 10x mindset pushed him into actions he would have never considered if he had been playing small. Think about this in your own life. Maybe you want to write a book. Most people aim to finish the manuscript in a year. A 10x goal? Write the book, launch it globally, sell 100,000 copies, and turn it into a speaking career. That kind of thinking changes the way you wake up in the morning. It makes you get out of bed earlier, plan with more intensity, and refuse distractions. One of the biggest mental shifts in the 10x rule is that bigger goals are actually easier to achieve than smaller ones. Why? Because small goals do not inspire you. They do not generate enough energy or excitement to keep you going when things get tough. Big goals, however, light a fire under you. They make you take massive action because the prize is worth it. Cardone also points out that aiming 10x higher protects you from one of the biggest threats to success: underestimating what it takes. Most people set a goal, take minimal action, and then are shocked when they do not get the results they expected. The truth is, almost every worthwhile achievement requires more effort, more time, and more persistence than you initially imagine. By aiming for 10x, you automatically prepare yourself to do more, expect more, and push harder. In a real-world example, Cardone recalls meeting entrepreneurs who said they wanted to double their income. He would ask them, why not multiply it by 10? At first, they laughed. Then they began to imagine the possibilities: bigger contracts, larger audiences, more impactful products. Soon, the conversations shifted from "I hope I can" to "here is how I will." The mental barrier is always the hardest part. We tell ourselves stories about what is realistic. The 10x rule dismantles this by showing that realistic is often just another word for average. If you are listening to this right now, think about your biggest goal. Then, multiply it by 10. It might feel uncomfortable. It might feel impossible. That is the point. Discomfort is the signal that you are stepping into a higher level of thinking. Grant Cardone insists that you do not need to have all the answers before you commit to a 10x goal. The answers come when you start moving. Action creates clarity. When you commit to something massive, your brain starts searching for ways to make it happen. You talk to different people, read different books, and spot opportunities you would have overlooked before. Part 1 ends with this challenge: stop thinking in terms of what is probable and start thinking in terms of what is possible. Then, multiply it. 10 times the goal, 10 times the action. Because if you aim small, you risk living small, and that is the greatest loss of all. Part 2, taking massive action. Grant Cardone makes it clear, success is not reserved for the smartest, the luckiest, or the most talented. It belongs to those who take more action than anyone else. And not just a little more, 10 times more. This is what separates the winners from the dreamers. Imagine two people opening a coffee shop on the same street. The first owner invests in nice decor, a good coffee machine, and a few local ads. They hope word of mouth will bring in customers. The second owner? They do all of that, but also knock on doors in the neighborhood, partner with local businesses, run social media ads, host coffee tasting events, and even deliver free samples to nearby offices. Within months, the second coffee shop is thriving while the first struggles. The difference? Massive action. Most people underestimate how much effort success really takes. Cardone says that almost everyone falls into one of three categories when it comes to action. No action people who wait, hesitate, and let opportunities pass. Average action people who do just enough to get by. Massive action people who push far beyond what is comfortable, doing whatever it takes to achieve their goals. The 10x rule is about living in that third category. When you take massive action, you create momentum. Opportunities start finding you. People begin to notice. Your results compound because you are not just dabbling, you are dominating. Cardone himself used this approach early in his sales career. While his colleagues made a few calls a day, he made hundreds. While they left work at 5, he stayed until he had booked new meetings. This did not just make him a top performer, it made him impossible to ignore. He started receiving offers, invitations, and referrals that never would have come his way if he had acted like everyone else. Taking massive action does not mean you will never face failure. In fact, you might fail more often. But here is the key: when you are taking 10x the action, you give yourself 10x the chances to succeed. One failed sales call means nothing if you are making 100 calls a day. A rejected proposal is just a small bump when you have 10 more in motion. Think about the people who seem to get lucky. In reality, they are usually the ones taking the most action. The musician playing gigs every night eventually gets discovered. The entrepreneur pitching their product to everyone they meet eventually lands a big investor. Luck is just a byproduct of massive action. One of the common excuses people use is "I am waiting for the right time." Cardone destroys this idea. The right time rarely comes. Conditions will never be perfect. If you wait until you feel ready, you will be waiting forever. Massive action means starting now, even if you do not have all the answers, even if you feel uncertain. Let us take an everyday example. Suppose you want to get in shape. Most people start by going to the gym twice a week. But massive action? That would mean overhauling your diet, exercising daily, hiring a coach, and tracking every meal and workout. The difference in results over 3 months would be dramatic. Massive action also forces you to face your limits. You will discover what you are capable of when you push yourself far beyond what you thought possible. It will be uncomfortable. It will challenge you. But it will also make you stronger, faster, and more resilient. Cardone says that the reason most people do not take massive action is fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of looking foolish. But here is the truth: the pain of inaction is always greater in the long run. The regret of not trying, of wondering what if, lasts far longer than the sting of a failed attempt. One powerful example from Cardon's life was during a recession when most businesses were cutting back. Instead of retreating, he expanded. He made more calls, invested in more marketing, and pursued more deals than ever before. While competitors were shrinking, he was growing because massive action does not stop when times get tough, it doubles. The key takeaway from part 2 is this: stop operating at the level of effort that keeps you in the middle. The middle is crowded. The middle is noisy. If you want to stand out, dominate, and win, you must outwork, outthink, and outact everyone around you. 10 times the effort creates 10 times the opportunities, and those opportunities lead to extraordinary results. Massive action is not just a strategy, it is a lifestyle. Once you commit to it, you start seeing every day as a chance to advance your goals. Every conversation becomes an opportunity. Every setback becomes a lesson. And the more you act, the more the world opens up to you. Part 3, Overcoming Average Thinking. Average thinking is one of the biggest traps that keeps people stuck. Grant Cardone says that most of us are conditioned from an early age to think small. We are told not to get our hopes up, to be realistic, and to play it safe. While this might sound like good advice, it is actually the reason why so many people never achieve their full potential. Imagine you are at a swimming pool with 2 diving boards. One is short and low, just a few feet above the water. The other is tall and high, giving you a thrilling leap into the deep end. Most people choose the short board because it feels safer. They might even laugh at the person climbing the tall one, saying it is too risky. But here is the truth: the view from the top is better, the experience is greater, and the reward is worth it if you have the courage to climb. Cardone calls average thinking a silent killer of ambition. It does not stop you outright, it slowly convinces you that good enough is all you can expect. Average thinkers aim for average goals, take average action, and get average results. Look around in everyday life. You see it in the person who stays in a job they dislike because it pays the bills. You see it in the entrepreneur who never scales their business because what I have now is fine. You see it in the student who stops studying once they hit a passing grade. Average thinking is everywhere, and it is contagious. Cardone shares how this mindset nearly held him back. Early in his career, after achieving some success in sales, he started to relax. He was making enough money to live comfortably. He thought he had made it. But over time, that comfort started to shrink. Competition grew, his industry changed, and suddenly his enough was not enough anymore. That was when he realized, comfort is temporary, and average is dangerous. Overcoming average thinking requires a complete mental shift. Instead of asking, what is the least I can do to get by, you start asking, what is the most I can do to dominate? You stop comparing yourself to people doing worse than you, and start measuring yourself against the best in the world. Consider the example of sports. If a runner only trains enough to match the slowest person in the race, they will never win. But if they train to beat the fastest person, even if they fall short, they will still be far ahead of the average. This is how 10x thinking works. It pulls you so far above average that you become exceptional almost by default. Another danger of average thinking is that it breeds complacency. When you are satisfied with good enough, you stop learning, stop growing, and stop pushing. Cardone warns that this is when the world passes you by. Technology changes, markets shift, and competitors innovate. If you are standing still, you are actually falling behind. One powerful real-world example comes from the business world during the rise of online shopping. Many traditional retailers thought their existing stores and loyal customers would protect them. They kept doing what they had always done, operating on average effort. Meanwhile, companies like Amazon were thinking 10x bigger, building massive infrastructure, offering more products, and delivering faster. The result? The average thinkers struggled to survive, while the 10x thinkers dominated the market. Overcoming average thinking means refusing to accept limits that most people consider normal. It means questioning the idea of realistic goals. If someone tells you your dream is too big, Cardone says that is usually a sign you are on the right track. But it is not enough to just think bigger, you must also surround yourself with people who think bigger. If your circle is made up of average thinkers, they will pull you back to their level. You need to be around people who make you feel uncomfortable with how much they are achieving, people who challenge you to raise your standards. One strategy Cardone suggests is to always set goals that make you slightly nervous. If you write down a goal and it feels easy, you are thinking too small. If it makes you wonder, How in the world will I do this? That is where growth begins. Breaking free from average thinking also requires resilience. The moment you start aiming higher, you will face criticism. People will tell you to slow down, that you are working too hard, or that you are obsessed. Cardon's answer to this: wear it like a badge of honor. Obsession is the fuel of the extraordinary. The main message of part 3 is simple but powerful: average is the enemy. If you want an exceptional life, you cannot think, act, or settle like everyone else. You must think 10x bigger, take 10x more action, and refuse to stop until you have created something far beyond average. Part 4, Fear as Fuel. Grant Cardone has a very different view of fear than most people. While most see fear as a stop sign, he sees it as a green light, a signal that you are heading in the right direction. Fear, he says, is not there to warn you to turn back, but to push you to step forward. Think about the first time you did something that scared you but ended up being worth it. Maybe it was speaking in front of a crowd, asking someone out on a date, or quitting a job to start your own business. In the moment, your heart raced, your palms sweated, and your mind told you 100 reasons to back down. But after you acted, you felt alive. You felt proud. You realized the fear was temporary, but the reward lasted. Cardone believes that if a goal does not scare you, it is probably too small. Fear shows you that you are stretching beyond your comfort zone, and that is exactly where growth happens. The problem is that most people let fear talk them out of action. They confuse discomfort with danger. Take the example of a young entrepreneur named Lisa. She had an idea for a mobile app that could help people save money on groceries. She loved the concept but was terrified to pitch it to investors. What if they laughed at her? What if they said no? For months, she avoided it, telling herself she would pitch when the time was right. But the truth was, she was waiting for the fear to go away and it never did. Eventually, she realized that the fear meant she was doing something important. She booked her first pitch meeting, stumbled through it nervously, and still got her first investor. Cardone himself says fear has been his constant companion, especially in big decisions. Whether it was buying his first property, starting a new company, or speaking to thousands of people, he never waited for the fear to disappear. Instead, he treated it like an indicator that he was on the path to something big. The 10x rule approach to fear is simple: acknowledge it, but act anyway. The more you act in the face of fear, the more resilient you become. Fear loses its control over you when it realizes you are not going to obey it. Another reason fear is valuable is that it sharpens your focus. When you are scared, your senses heighten, your attention sharpens, and you operate at a higher level. Cardone says this is why massive action often comes with moments of fear, because you are pushing into uncharted territory, and your body and mind are fully engaged. Consider the story of Elon Musk during the early days of SpaceX. The company faced multiple rocket failures, each costing millions of dollars. The pressure was enormous, the fear of losing everything was real, and the critics were loud. But Musk used that fear to double down, work longer hours, and push his team harder. That focus, born from fear, eventually led to the historic launch that made SpaceX a leader in the space industry. Fear can also reveal what you care about most. You do not feel fear about things that do not matter to you. If you are terrified of failing at a project, it means you value the outcome deeply. Cardone suggests using that as motivation instead of avoiding what scares you. Lean into it because it matters. Of course, fear can also disguise itself in more subtle ways. Sometimes it shows up as procrastination, making excuses, or endlessly preparing instead of acting. You might tell yourself you are researching or planning, but really you are avoiding. Cardone warns that the longer you delay, the stronger fear grows. The best way to weaken it is immediate action. One personal example he shares is how he used to fear making sales calls to high-profile clients. He would hesitate, worry about saying the wrong thing, or imagine being rejected. But then he started forcing himself to make those calls first thing in the morning, before he could overthink them. Over time, those calls became routine, and the fear faded. The truth is, fear never fully disappears when you are chasing big goals. But you can train yourself to see it differently. Instead of thinking, I am scared, so I should stop, you think, I am scared, so I must be doing something that matters. This mental shift turns fear from an obstacle into a tool. The more you face fear, the more it transforms into confidence. Every time you push through it, you prove to yourself that you are stronger than you thought. That self-belief compounds, making you capable of even greater challenges in the future. Part 4's lesson is clear: do not wait for fear to vanish. It will not. Instead, use it as a compass pointing you toward growth. Let it energize you. Let it focus you. And most importantly, let it remind you that you are alive and moving towards something extraordinary. Part 5, Massive Action Mindset. Most people have goals. They write them down, think about them, maybe even tell friends or post them online. But then, they take average action and wonder why nothing changes. Grant Cardone's core message in the 10x rule is this: if you want extraordinary results, you must take massive action, far beyond what you think is necessary. Think about it like building a fire. If you light a match and toss in a few twigs, you might get a small flame for a few minutes, but it will quickly burn out. Massive action is like throwing in armloads of wood, fanning the flames, and keeping them roaring until the fire is unstoppable. Cardone identifies 4 degrees of action people take: doing nothing, retreating, taking normal action, and taking massive action. Most of the world operates in the third category. They take normal, reasonable steps. They do enough to move forward slightly, but not enough to make a real breakthrough. The rare few operate in the fourth category, massive action. These are the people who seem unstoppable, who keep pushing when others would rest, and who eventually achieve results that others call lucky. Consider the story of Howard Schultz, the man behind Starbucks. When Schultz first had the vision of bringing the Italian coffee house culture to America, most investors turned him down. It would have been easy to take that as a sign to scale back his dream. Instead, he doubled his efforts, pitching to more investors, refining his business plan, and pushing relentlessly. He took massive action, traveling, networking, and pouring his time and resources into the idea. The result? Starbucks became one of the most recognized brands in the world. Massive action is not just about working harder, it is about multiplying your effort in a focused direction. It means making more calls than you think are necessary, creating more content than you think you have time for, meeting more people than you feel comfortable with, and following up more times than seems polite. Cardone learned this lesson in real estate sales. Early in his career, he would call a few prospects each day and wait for responses. Results were slow, and income was inconsistent. Then he made a decision: he would 10x his effort. He increased his calls from a handful per day to dozens. He followed up aggressively, knocked on doors, and attended every networking event he could find. The result? His sales numbers skyrocketed, and he quickly became one of the top performers in his field. Massive action also requires a shift in how you see time. Most people overestimate how much time they have and underestimate how much effort is required. They think they can spread their action out and still get results. But Cardone argues that momentum is built through intense, concentrated effort. When you go all in for a period of time, you create a wave that can carry you forward far longer than slow, steady effort ever could. Think of athletes in training for the Olympics. They do not train a little each day for years and expect to win. They train at a high intensity, often multiple times a day, pushing themselves to the limit, because they know the competition is fierce and the margin for error is small. That is the massive action mindset in play. Another key point is that massive action forces you to get creative. When you commit to doing whatever it takes, you stop seeing obstacles as dead ends and start seeing them as puzzles to solve. If one path is blocked, you immediately look for another. This adaptability is one of the reasons massive action works. It keeps you moving forward no matter what. Take the example of Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx. She faced rejection after rejection from manufacturers who did not believe in her product. Instead of slowing down, she used massive action to find another way, calling hundreds of factories, refining her prototype, and pitching again and again. Eventually, she found a manufacturer who said yes, and Spanx went on to become a billion-dollar company. One common misunderstanding is that massive action will burn you out. Cardone argues that it is actually the opposite. The energy and results you get from massive action fuel you. When you are in motion, taking bold steps, and seeing progress, you feel more alive than when you are stuck in hesitation or average effort. Of course, massive action does not guarantee instant success. You will still face setbacks, failures, and resistance. But the sheer volume of effort increases your chances of breaking through. If you make one sales call and it fails, that is the end. If you make 50, at least a few will work out. It is a numbers game, and massive action tilts the odds in your favor. The massive action mindset also changes how others see you. People notice when someone is operating at a different level. Opportunities often flow to those who are visible, active, and persistent. Cardone says massive action makes you hard to ignore, and that alone opens doors that average action never could. Part 5's takeaway is straightforward but life-changing: decide what you want, and then take action at a level that feels extreme. Do not wait for perfect conditions. Do not worry about looking obsessive. In a world where most people are barely moving, massive action will set you apart and put you on a collision course with extraordinary success. Part 6, Obsession is your superpower. If you have ever been told, "You are too obsessed," Grant Cardone would probably tell you to take it as a compliment. In the 10x rule, he argues that obsession is not a flaw, it is the ultimate fuel for achieving extraordinary success. The truth is, every great accomplishment in history was driven by obsession. The Wright brothers were obsessed with building a machine that could fly. Steve Jobs was obsessed with creating beautiful, user-friendly technology. Serena Williams was obsessed with becoming the greatest tennis player in the world. None of them achieved greatness by being casual or balanced in their approach, they went all in. Cardone shares his own journey. Early in his career, he had been drifting. He was working in sales but not excelling. He would show up, do what was expected, and go home. His results were average, and his life reflected it. Then he made a decision: he would become obsessed with being the best in his field. That meant studying sales relentlessly, practicing every technique, tracking every call, and thinking about his craft all the time. People called him intense, even extreme. But within a few years, he had transformed himself into a top performer and was earning more than he ever imagined. Obsession works because it focuses your energy. Instead of spreading your attention across a dozen interests, you concentrate it on one mission. This concentration creates momentum, and momentum creates breakthroughs. Take the example of Thomas Edison. He was not the first to work on the electric light bulb, but his obsession with improving it led to over 1,000 patents and eventually the creation of a commercially viable version. Edison's work ethic was legendary. He often worked through the night, testing idea after idea, failure after failure, until he succeeded. Without obsession, that level of persistence would be impossible. Of course, our culture often teaches us to avoid obsession. We are told to be realistic, well-rounded, and balanced. Cardone flips this on its head. He says that in a competitive world, the average approach is the fastest route to mediocrity. If you want to stand out, you have to be willing to do what most people are not, and that means embracing obsession. Some people fear that obsession will make them miserable, but Cardone says it is the opposite. When you are obsessed with something you love, the work energizes you. You wake up excited, you push through obstacles, and you keep going long after others have quit. Obsession can make the journey feel like play, even when it is demanding. A modern-day example is Elon Musk. Whether it is Tesla, SpaceX, or Neuralink, Musk is deeply involved in every detail, often working 80 to 100-hour weeks. Critics say he is too consumed by his work, but Musk sees his mission advancing sustainable energy and making humanity multiplanetary as worth the obsession. His intensity has allowed him to achieve things that entire industries once thought impossible. Cardone also points out that obsession creates mastery. Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000-hour rule, the idea that mastery comes after thousands of hours of practice, is really about sustained obsession. You cannot put in that kind of time and attention unless you are deeply committed to your goal. But here is the important part: obsession alone is not enough. It must be paired with massive action. If you obsess over a goal but only think about it without acting, you are just daydreaming. True obsession drives you to take relentless action, constantly improving, refining, and pushing forward. One of Cardone's favorite strategies is to immerse himself completely in his field. He listens to industry podcasts, reads books, studies competitors, and talks to top performers. By surrounding himself with his mission from every angle, he keeps his obsession alive and his mind focused. He also warns about watering down your obsession to please others. When you go all in, some people will feel uncomfortable. They might accuse you of being extreme or unhealthy. That is because your intensity reminds them of their own lack of commitment. Cardone's advice: ignore them. The people who truly support you will understand that obsession is the price of greatness. There is a powerful example in the world of sports: Kobe Bryant. Known as the Black Mamba, Kobe's obsession with basketball was legendary. He would arrive at the gym before sunrise, train for hours, study game footage, and then train again. His teammates often said they could not match his work ethic. That obsession turned him into one of the greatest players in NBA history, with 5 championships to his name. Cardone says that if you want the kind of life most people only dream about, you have to be willing to commit at a level most people cannot imagine. That means giving yourself permission to become obsessed. Let your mission consume your thoughts, your time, and your energy. And here is the unexpected benefit: obsession inspires others. When people see you fully committed, they either want to join you or they respect your dedication. Your intensity can attract opportunities, partners, and resources that would never come to someone taking a casual approach. Part 6's message is clear: do not tone yourself down to fit in. In a world full of distractions, obsession is your superpower. Choose a mission that matters deeply to you, throw yourself into it completely, and refuse to apologize for caring that much. It is that kind of focus and drive that turns dreams into reality. Part 7, Fear, Risk, and the 10x Way. Grant Cardone says that if you are not feeling fear, you are not aiming high enough. Fear is not a signal to stop, it is proof that you are pushing beyond your comfort zone. In the 10x rule, he reframes fear as a compass: if something scares you, it is often the very thing you need to do. Think about it. The first time you spoke in public, you probably felt nervous. The first time you asked for a raise, your heart might have raced. The first time you invested in something big, you may have felt your stomach turn. Yet, those moments often lead to growth. Cardone shares how, early in his career, he avoided big deals because they intimidated him. He would stick to smaller, safer transactions. The problem was, the smaller deals did not change his life. Eventually, he realized that the deals that scared him were the ones that could move the needle. So, he started saying yes to opportunities that made him uncomfortable: larger investments, bigger clients, and more public speaking engagements. Each time, the fear faded, and his confidence grew. Fear is a sign that you are stretching yourself. If you only operate in spaces where you feel completely safe, you will stay in the same place. Cardone argues that most people let fear paralyze them, but high performers use fear as fuel. Look at Richard Branson, the founder of Virgin Group. He has launched airlines, record labels, space companies, industries far outside his original expertise. Branson admits that he often feels fear when entering a new market, but he uses that fear to prepare, learn, and move forward boldly. His willingness to take risks has turned Virgin into a global brand. But risk is not the same as recklessness. Cardone is not telling you to gamble blindly. The 10x approach is about taking calculated risks big enough to scare you, but backed by preparation, research, and massive action. For example, Cardone once invested millions into a real estate project that stretched him financially. He was nervous, but he had done his homework. He studied the market, understood the demand, and had a plan for execution. It was a big risk, but a calculated one. The deal paid off massively, and it taught him that playing small was more dangerous in the long run than betting on himself. Here is something important: the cost of not taking risks is invisible but huge. When you avoid risks, you also avoid opportunities. You stay in jobs you do not love, you miss out on potential income, and you never find out what you are truly capable of. Cardone says that comfort is the enemy of greatness, and risk is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Take Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, again. She invested her own savings into developing her product because she believed in it. She faced rejection after rejection from manufacturers, but she kept going. That initial leap, risking her time, money, and reputation, turned into a billion-dollar brand. Fear is also tied to procrastination. Many people put off important actions not because they are lazy, but because they are afraid. They wait for the right time, a time when the risk will magically disappear. But that time never comes. Cardone insists that action must come before confidence. You do not wait until you are fearless to act, you act, and that is how you become fearless. One of his personal strategies is to commit first and figure out the details later. This forces you to act before your fear talks you out of it. If you wait until you feel fully ready, you will miss your chance. Fear also shrinks when you surround yourself with people who play big. If everyone around you is playing small, their comfort zone becomes your normal. But if you spend time with high achievers who are constantly taking risks, their mindset rubs off on you. You start to see big moves as normal. Think about the early days of Silicon Valley. Entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and Larry Page were all taking bold, risky actions, leaving college, starting companies in garages, challenging massive corporations. In that environment, risk-taking was not just accepted, it was expected. Cardon's advice is to reframe fear into excitement. Physiologically, fear and excitement feel similar. Your heart races, your breath quickens, your mind sharpens. The difference is in the story you tell yourself. Instead of saying, "I am scared," say, "I am excited." That shift can turn paralyzing fear into forward motion. Part 7 ends with a challenge: make fear your green light. When something makes you nervous, lean into it instead of backing away. Say yes to the big deal, make the uncomfortable call, launch the bold idea. Prepare, plan, and then move fast. In the 10x mindset, fear means you are on the right track. Risk is not something to be avoided but embraced strategically. And when you push through fear consistently, you build a new identity, someone who does not just dream big but acts big. The people who change their lives, their industries, and sometimes even the world are not the ones who avoided fear and risk. They are the ones who saw fear as a sign to go forward and risk as the price of greatness. So, the next time you feel fear, remember Grant Cardon's words: let it be your signal, not your stop. Because on the other side of that fear might be the life you have been chasing all along. We have reached the end of the 10x rule by Grant Cardon. But this is not the kind of book you simply finish and place back on the shelf. This is a call to action, a challenge to live bigger, push harder, and demand more from yourself than you ever thought possible. Throughout this journey, we have explored how thinking at normal levels produces normal results, and how multiplying your efforts and ambitions by 10 can completely transform your life. You have seen that success is not an accident, it is the result of massive action, relentless persistence, and an unwillingness to settle for less. Grant Cardon reminds us that there is no safety in playing small. Playing it safe may feel comfortable, but it is also the surest way to limit your potential. The real danger lies in doing too little, setting goals that are too small, and taking actions that are too timid. We have talked about fear, and how it is not a sign to stop but a green light to keep going. We have talked about risk, and how it is the price of greatness. We have seen that failure is not the end but part of the process, and that excuses are simply stories we tell ourselves to avoid responsibility. The truth is, the 10x life is available to anyone. It does not matter where you start. What matters is your willingness to aim higher than you think is reasonable, to take more action than you believe is necessary, and to persist longer than anyone else would. Let us make this practical. As you finish listening to this, think about one area of your life. Maybe it is your career, your business, your health, or your relationships. Ask yourself, what would my goal look like if I multiplied it by 10? And then, what would my action plan look like if I multiplied my efforts by 10? When you apply this mindset, you stop waiting for perfect circumstances. You stop letting fear dictate your moves. You stop measuring your goals by what is realistic and start measuring them by what excites and challenges you. Grant Cardon's own story proves this works. From being broke and struggling, he built a multi-million-dollar empire not by playing safe but by consistently showing up, working harder than everyone else, and never lowering his targets. He created opportunities instead of waiting for them. And you can too. The choice is yours. You can keep operating at average levels, doing what feels comfortable, and getting predictable results. Or you can commit to the 10x rule, thinking and acting so massively that your life starts to expand in ways you could not have imagined. As we close this audiobook, remember this: success is not a matter of luck. It is a matter of commitment, effort, and action. You are capable of more than you think. You are capable of building a life that excites you every single day. So go out there. Set the goal that scares you. Take the action that stretches you. Live by the 10x rule, and watch how fast your world changes. This is Books Arena, and I will see you in the next audiobook journey. Until then, think big, act bigger, and never settle for anything less than extraordinary.